Let me tell you about a story that happened a few years back that has changed how I do things from then on out. I will start with an introduction to myself. My name is Georgia. I had recently turned 20 when this happened, and I lived a plainer and more boring lifestyle than most. My mum and dad had passed away, both to having cancer, and I was sent to go and live with my grandmother, who was not all too well herself. I had become very reserved. I lost all of my friends and found myself going for nature walks around the local preserved forest by myself, daily. Rain, snow, wind or sun, I was out in it. It was the only time I had ever truly felt free, like I could breathe and not feel so lonely. It was coming into the autumn months, where rainfall became the more dominant weather. I was happy with that though. Something about the rain really helped me to relax even further. Hearing the trees sway back and forth, the rain falling onto my umbrella, the odd animal making its own calls, I came across another walker. In weather as bad as this, I was a bit surprised to see anyone, but I was okay. Head down, umbrella tilted slightly forward so they could not see me, and just kept on walking. It was what I had usually done, so I was hoping it would work this time. "Hi, think you dropped something." This person spoke out. I was now forced to acknowledge them, even if I knew I had not dropped anything. After the casual greets, I found out this person's name was James. He lived in the same neighborhood. He had seen me previously before, but never wanted to intrude, and was positive I had dropped something. We both looked around, but everything was muddy, fallen leaves everywhere, soaked, and whatever I had dropped, if anything at all, was well camouflaged. "I can't find it, so do not worry. Maybe it was just some tissue and it flew off with the wind." I gave an awkward smile, really wanting to head back off again. Yes, I was socially awkward. James bid me his farewells, and I was soon back on track. Usually, I would head up to the top of the mountain for a view of the town that was my favourite. But now the sun would set a lot sooner, and so I took a turn that would lead back to my house. My grandmother was not at home when I returned around 5 in the evening. She was always playing cards with her friends, but I had the key, or so I thought. I checked every pocket, but nothing. Maybe that was what I had dropped, my key. It was dark now, but I had to go back as my phone had died, and I had not known where my grandmother's friends had lived. I would not pretend going back into that forest was not scary. I could feel my anxiety kick in, and I was a lot more aware of my surroundings. Where I had dropped the key was quite far in, far enough that I was second guessing my decision with every few steps I was taking. The rain and the wind really were not helping either, as it blew the umbrella in directions that at times became uncontrollable, also masking the sounds of whatever could have been lurking inside. Yes, I also had a vivid mind. I watched a lot of scary films, so my mind was a creative place. But thankfully, I reached where I thought that I dropped the key and was searching around, mainly kneeling and feeling the ground with my hands, when I heard someone speak. "So, you did lose something then?" It was James, smiling as he grabbed hold of a torch from his bag and shone it to the ground. I had jumped up to my feet, and I did not feel so comfortable with him being here, especially at night, randomly. But I was desperate to find my key, so I replied bluntly and continued looking at the ground. He had helped me search for quite some time. We searched under rocks, behind trees, even down by a hole that looked so deep the bottom could not be seen. It was initially covered by rotten wood, but we were both curious. I had asked him why he was out in the forest that night, shortly after already walking through here. But his reply was brief. He said he had seen me go back in and wanted to make sure I was okay. I found that a little strange, but that was it. I had found the key. It was tucked away under some leaves by a banking. James had taken it upon himself to walk me home. We even shared my umbrella, which I was not happy with. But when I got home, I noticed the front door had been broken in. It had been pushed shut, but could clearly see the lock and handle had been damaged. I reached back for James, this stranger who I did not even know existed not so long ago, asking him to stay and what should I do. He said that he did not have his phone on him and now neither of us could call the police. Where my grandmother lived, the house was on its own for at least a good 20-minute walk, depending on how fast you walked. So, I decided to go inside. I did not know if my grandmother was inside, or whoever broke in was still in there, but I knew the house phone was in the living room, to the right of the front door. James was trying to hold me back, telling me it was a bad move, but I had no choice, or so I thought. I could not risk leaving and taking ages to get help if my only family were left inside and hurt. I pushed the door open. It creaked a little and I just looked inside. The house was old but grand. It was passed down in generations, so it had a wonderful history. In front of the front door was a small entrance room, hand jackets up and tucked shoes away. Then the stairs to the upper floor. To the left was the kitchen and to the right the living room. The back room was never used, more of a place to store stuff that was to be given away to charities. No lights were on, and no sounds were heard as I stepped inside. I quickly stammered over to the home phone, but it was dead. Then as James called out in a whisper from the porch, there was creaking above me, directly above the living room. That was my grandmother's bedroom. I saw James run off into the distance from the window, and I froze as I heard footsteps walk around the room. I crept around to the back of the room as it looped back into the kitchen and towards the stairs. It also gave me a sneaky view if someone were to walk down them or up. It was a small hole I had noticed previously, but I had to climb up a stack of 2 boxes before I could see through it. Clumsily, I had made a noise and heard the footsteps brought to a halt. I froze in silence as everything else grew quiet. Then a footstep on the stairs made them creak. I got myself into position as each step felt slow and careful, like this person was trying hard to find the quietest part of the steps. My grandmother did not seem to care about the steps, and I had complained a lot, but I had learned where each quiet spot was. So, as I watched through this little hole, I could see this dark figure, hood up, walking down the stairs. You would think they were looking around trying to spot where I was hiding. But nothing. Lifeless motion walking down. I saw them turn to the left, towards the living room, and I hopped back down the boxes. I wanted to see if my grandmother were up the stairs, so I went around to the right, through the kitchen, and I could see this figure. I presumed it was a man looking around in the living room. He seemed to be holding something metal, something hard. I quietly edged towards the steps and went up the stairs, stepping exactly where I knew was not going to make a sound. I breathed a sigh of relief as I reached the top and headed into my grandmother's room. I noticed her on the bed, looking unconscious, as I became a bit careless and just walked in, stepping accidentally making the floorboards creak. I heard this person from below, running towards the steps and back up. I stumbled from my grandmother's pockets as I knew she always had her phone on her, and thankfully she still did now. I had no idea if this person was aware of the phone, but I took it and dived under the bed. This figure barged into the bedroom and stopped at the doorway. I dialed 911 and whispered saying that I needed the police immediately and kept things short, but brief, and letting them know how terrified I was. This man started walking around the room, even talking to my grandmother, saying things like was she the one making the sounds, etc. I was petrified, as I now had nowhere to go. I was so sure he was going to look under the bed. He walked out of the room and disappeared. I kept talking to the operator, saying that he was out of the room and had gone somewhere. But the operator kept telling me that the police was only a few minutes away and to stay where I was. But my adrenaline was going wild. I got up from the bed and edged towards the front door. I could feel the wind from the window engulf the room. The cold sent a shiver through my spine as I poked my head around the corner and saw the man staring at the end of the hallway. I knew it was a man now, as he screamed at me to stay where I was. Otherwise, he would kill my grandmother and myself. But I chucked myself out the window. I knew there was a little bit extra of a balcony from the porch below, and before I dropped to the ground, the police arrived. The man was at the window screaming for me to come back before noticing the police himself. I dropped to the ground and quickly told them he is inside and up the stairs. They ran in and searched for what seemed like forever. I heard them call out saying to drop the machete and get on the floor. I was outside when I heard all of this, but they were in my grandmother's room. A few minutes later, they came down with the man in handcuffs. He never looked at me, or even acknowledged my presence when he walked past. An ambulance arrived to help my grandmother, who had been drugged. She was starting to wake up when they were getting her to the hospital. But what I had found out later that night from my grandmother was that the man had told her to thank James for the tip-off, and it was going to be the last face she will ever see again. My grandmother, never fearing anything, refused to leave the house. I also stayed. I am here to this day. James has never been seen around the area anymore. A few more houses have also been built closer as well. So this one small town has started to flourish, and everybody, including myself, feels a bit safer. What still keeps me up at night though, is the thought that James, who I perceive to be very nice, was in on this all along.